What would you like? Where would you like me to start?
Sorry? Right. Okay, we are live right now. Hello, everybody. Hello, boys and girls. How are you? This is Alejandro Castillo, Mr. Volleyball from Mexico City today, Friday, January 21st of 2022. Welcome to the episode number 168. We will talk in this episode with big volleyball personality, Mr. Bill Neville. He's right now in Edmonds, Washington. But first, I will welcome my partner in crime, Octavio Medina. He is located also in Washington, but in Redmond. How are you, Octavio?
Hi, Alex. Hi, Bill. It's a
I
pleasure being here, talking to one of the most important coach in the USA volleyball, an Olympic guy with a lot of the history, with a lot of experience, and we are very, very fortunate to have you and to listen to you, uh, learn some stories, learn a lot about the US volleyball initials, and we are just ready to start.
Yeah, guys, please welcome Mr. Bill Neville, uh, Olympic volleyball coach of Los Angeles 1984 USA men's volleyball team, assistant coach at that time with Doug Bill, but he was also coach of Team Canada, Montana State University, University of Washington. He worked a long time for USA Volleyball. It's a pleasure to have you here, Bill. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. I enjoy it. And when you make that list of things, it just demonstrates how old I am these days. But yeah, but I can still blab about volleyball for sure.
Yeah, right. As I told you, 2 months ago in Querétaro, Mexico, came both Mr. John Kessel and Mr. Doc Bill here in Mexico to give a clinic, a very, very interesting clinic in Mexico. And I knew John Kessel and Doc Bill for the last 2 or 3 years. They were in the show 2 years ago. Well, Doc told me, hey, you gotta have Bill on your show. He was my assistant coach in Los Angeles in '84. He's a volleyball mastermind, big volleyball personality. And well, here we are. Thanks a lot, Bill.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
No, no, my pleasure. How's everything in Edmond? How about the COVID situation, about the climate?
Well, with the climate, it's actually been a great day. Actually nice compared to some places in the rest of the world. It's very mild. I don't mind it at all. I mean, the East Coast is in the single digits, and you look in the Midwest, and they get all kind of trouble. We get some rain, but that's about it. So I'll take it.
Chicago is tough. Toronto is
Oh,
tough.
yeah, yeah. I used to live there. It's bad news. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you know, Octavio is right now living in Redmond, and well, he lives in center Mexico. And he every day say, "Hey, we have a lot of cold. It's freezing over here." Well, we are not
Yeah, I can see your face. I
we
can
are
see the
not we
face.
are
Yeah.
not used to do that.
Ah, not that cool.
Well, okay. Again, thanks, Bill, for being here. Episode 168. I'm very, very close to reach 200 episodes, but it's a pleasure to have you here. Doug told me you worked together for a long time. I read your bio, and I didn't know that you came here to Mexico City for the '68 Olympics as an assistant coach with legend Jim Coleman. Please tell us something about that.
Well, yeah, I was 22 years old,
Wow.
and I was going in. I was actually a coach in training, and I was still in the army, and he brought me onto a staff, and he was really my mentor, and ultimately my original. I mean, he's a genius, and he was really that. he really developed USA volleyball into where it was going, and he faced a lot of adversity in this country. He's a Midwest guy, and most at that time, most volleyball was in the U.S. was the West Coast, and so they kind of thought, but I thought this guy knows everything. He'd just gotten back from Poland, really, where he had studied international volleyball, and I said, "Ooh, I'm going into coaching. I'm a midget. I'm only 5'9", so I figured, and I'd played a lot, and I still played, but I knew the game is a big man's game, and so I figured, well, I'm going to get to coaching. So here's a guy. He was a professor at George Williams College, and I thought, great opportunity. So I took 2 years basically. I took a coaching clinic basically, and he took me on clinics, and he had me demonstrate different things, the skills that had never been seen in the U.S., like that front dive, for example. And I thought that was the coolest thing going. So, I eventually became one of his assistants, and I took stats. And I'm one of the world's worst math people, but and that was before the age of computers, of course. So I hand took them, and so at the Olympic Games in Mexico City, that's what I did, is I took stats. And then then the women's team said, hey, Harlan Cohen was the coach, and he said, would you take ours too? I said, oh, sure, I was willing to do anything. In those 8 years, it was such an honor to do it, to be a part of the Olympics. And that was actually my first international trip. So being in Mexico City was the most exciting thing going. And so I stayed up for 2 weeks, and I'm surprised, I'm not sure how I lived through that, but I took stats, and then I'd stay up all night, and I used a circular slide rule to compute them, because there was no computers or anything. And that really was one of the great educations I ever had, because I studied, percentages and different things, and I could finally, send that. So what Coleman would have me do is, as the games would go on, I would watch what was going on, and then I was taking numbers, and then I would just write notes, and I wouldn't make any decisions. I'd just give him information, and he would take them, and then he'd make his decisions based on that. I did that with Harlan Cohen too. So it was one of the greatest educations for a young guy that wanted to coach. And in those days, there was no coaching education at all. And I had the greatest opportunity going, and I just loved it. And plus being in Mexico City and just reveling in that whole atmosphere, oh boy, it sold me. And that's what made my career. I mean, I still had to go through the Army, but I knew what I was going to do after I got out.
Do you know, Bill, that the venue is still operating?
Is it what's that?
Is it still operating, the venue of volleyball? Yeah, in the Olympics, yeah.
Well, that was a great opportunity. I'll tell you one thing. The Russians at that time, the Soviets at that time, had a guy named Ivan Bugienkov. Does that name ring a bell?
Where?
Ivan Bugienkov, the Soviet Union. He was a player on their team. And he hit a ball. He hit the hardest ball I've ever seen in my life. He hit a ball and bounced it up into the stands. And I'd never seen that. And I went, oh my, I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And they were fairly strong, of course. And, but I mean, all those big teams were good. I mean, I just marveled at the talent, but that venue, I really enjoyed that. That was the greatest place to play. And I imagine it still is. It's almost, it's 40 years old or something now, but they still play there, huh?
Actually, 6 years ago, there were held the Olympic qualification tournament, and in that place, Mexico qualified for the Rio Olympics.
Oh yeah.
In the same Olympic venue, in Mexico. It's amazing.
Great facility. Yeah.
Octavio.
Yes, I remember that one, and definitely this venue is one of the most important venues in Mexico. As Alejandro just said, we have the Mexico qualification for the World Olympic Games for the 2016 in Brazil. So I was there. It was one of my very happy memories for that qualification. I remember the exactly point. Actually, I have it filmed. The exactly point where Mexico was qualified, and it was a mess in the venue. Everyone was just jumping, happy, and we didn't even won the game, but we just got the qualification because we won that set, and because of that set won, we had we defeat the other team, so it was amazing.
And for Mexico, it was only the second time in the Olympics. The first one was when we held the Olympics here in Mexico City in '68.
Because
So,
we were the guest. Yeah.
You were the host, yeah.
and Bill, please tell us something about. I have heard and I have read a lot of Mr. Jim Coleman. Can you tell us something about the impact of a personality like Jim Coleman in volleyball for USA?
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, he was playing and he played until he passed away. I mean, a guy, and he, as I say, he was from the Midwest and he played and he got interviewed by the Chicago Tribune in that, and remember, he was appointed the national coach, the US coach. And the West Coast players went, who's this guy? I mean, it's hard to explain. There was a division of attitude, if you will. And really anybody west of the San Andreas Fault, which is, in other words, Southern California.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
Doug is also from the Midwest, from Cleveland.
pardon me? He was,
Doug Beal is also
oh
from the
yeah, no,
Midwest,
that
from
was another
Cleveland.
story. Yeah, Doug came out of the same. Yeah. So Coleman was a brash guy. I mean, he he said when he was interviewed by the Chicago Tribune and he made a statement. He said, and I remember reading this. He said, "Well, I'm coaching the team, but I could probably be playing on the team." And I went, "Oh, Jim, you shouldn't have said that. If that stuff gets out to the West Coast, the players will go nuts." I mean, it's like, ay. And of course it did. And but he didn't care. I mean, that's the thing. Guy didn't. Jim was a pretty confident guy, and I loved him. I mean, and he was as loyal as you'd ever want to be. But he knew the game, and he was really innovative, and he thought about it, and he would try anything, and that's what I liked about him because I'm that way too. And he was very creative, and if somebody disagreed with him, good, he didn't care. And so he was fun to where I was so lucky to have met him, and then kind of got under his wing, and he took me to all kinds of things, and I offered all kinds of opportunities. And when I went into the Army I mean, he was in college. He was at George Williams College where I was a student. But when I went into the Army, and that was during the Vietnam War, and he was, and I went in and I was drafted, and everybody pretty well thought, well, I was figuring I was going to Vietnam, but then but the word came down that somehow the Pentagon, a guy named George Wilson, asked if I was interested in coaching the All Army team. I went, what? I'm 22. I said, yeah, as an alternative to going to war. Yeah, that'd work. So see, Coleman, he said, there's a guy in the Army that I trained to coach, and that was me. And he said, and I reckon, and he knows everybody, he knew everybody. So he called this guy, George Wilson, who was in charge of Army sports, and said, I trained this guy, he's in the Army now. I would recommend that he becomes your all Army coach. And that's what I did. And then and then I coached that, and then I coached the inter-service team, and then I went to the Olympic Games. I mean, Coleman, he was fabulous. And the irony of the whole thing, down the road, when I became the head coach of the national team, many years later, Jim was my assistant coach. And and then actually he was another little item. I'm jumping probably way ahead of you, but when I became the head coach of Canada's Olympic team, and when I interviewed for that job, he, he was the other finalist for that job. And I beat him out. And I felt badly about it because in my opinion, I didn't stand a chance. I mean, he was so further ahead of me, but he unfortunately had he offended people sometimes. I mean, he was so aggressive, but very positive. But some people went, "What?" Because he was a wild man, and I guess I was not, and and I was hired, but I thought, oh no, because he's just one of my all-time great friends, and he was the first one to congratulate me. That's the kind of guy he was. He was not offended at all. In fact, he was proud of me getting that job, even though I beat him out for it, because he knew that he developed me. I mean, he was a very, very unusual guy, brilliant, brilliant guy, and so loyal. I mean, he was the greatest.
Amazing, amazing, Bill. Let's go back a little. We have talked about your first stint as a head coach when you were 22 in the Olympics. But how did you start in volleyball? Did you play a little? How was this turn to become a coach? Have you ever tried another sport, or volleyball was always your first choice?
Well, no, I didn't start playing volleyball until I was a senior in high school. Volleyball was, I grew up in the days when volleyball was something you played in the parks at picnics. And I played all the classic in the US classic sports that you play in high school: football, baseball, basketball, and then you get with your friends and you think you're pretty good, And one time every summer we'd go to a summer camp, a YMCA summer camp, and we'd go there and we'd play and this and that. And one day in our cabin where we stayed, we had a typical argument of kids that are that year 17 or 18 years old that all played sports. And we started to debate, what's the toughest sport? What's the toughest sport to play? And football, American football. Basketball, no, baseball. Hardest thing to do is to hit a baseball, and blah, blah, blah. We're going back and forth. And so it's an endless debate that goes on to this day. And we'd all play them and we were doing this. And there was another guy who was one of our leaders, who was older than us, and we idolized him. His name was Larry Sears. And he was always a leader for us in the YMCA. And we had known that he had gone to George Williams College as a student. So he'd come back in the summers to work at camp. Well, at George Williams, he'd played volleyball. And he was about 6'2" maybe. And he comes in, he walks into our debate about what's the toughest sport. And he goes, well, boys, and he was a clever guy. He was we loved him. And he goes, really, kind of innocently, he said, well, let me throw in another sport to which I think is the toughest of all. And we went, what could possibly be tougher than what we've just described? And he said, well, let me throw in volleyball. And we just laughed. Volleyball?
What are you talking about? What's that?
Because all we remember is the volleyball we were taught by Waldo Miller in junior high school. And we said, volleyball, are you kidding me? We're visualizing what we knew as volleyball, which was a drooping net, that went across and you did, whatever. He goes, no, I think it's tougher than any of the sports you guys described. And we were we loved this guy, but we were now going to mock him to death. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, I should have been smarter because I led this whole thing. He said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll play you guys 1-on-6 or 9 or whatever you want. I'll just play you, but I'll play by myself and you guys put your team together and we'll play out and then we had a big grassy area out in front of our cabin. And he says, we'll put a net up there. And then, in fact, I'll even give you the serve. That was when, of course, you could only score when you had the serve. And we said, okay, because we're visualizing 1-on-6 in a fight, 1 on, whatever in any other sport. And we said, and we said, okay. He goes, but here's the deal. And I should have been listening, but this guy was a veteran and I was just a young punk. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll play you 1 on whatever you guys have, and we'll play to 15, and I'll give you 13 points and the serve.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And we roared even more. And we said, well, that sounds good. He said, well, what's the deal? He says, well, I'm coming back to the YMCA full time. And so when I come back, if I win, you guys would have to agree to join me on a team. And we'll make a team. And we went, and if you guys beat me, well, then I'll say no more. And, that's it. And we went, oh, that's fair. And so we're laughing. And of course, now there's a camp, remember? So the word gets around to all the younger kids in camp. This is going to happen. It's like a duel, and everybody's invited. The whole camp is out surrounding this court. And we're out there hooting and hollering and giving, trash talking and all this. And so he's standing out there and he intentionally looks pitiful. I mean, he just kind of slumping over a little bit. And we're over on the other side. And I think we played with, 9 guys, 3 lines. I don't know. We were just a group of people on the side. And so he gives us a serve, of course, because we started out. And he's standing by himself alone on the other side. And we're on this side with a crowd and of athletes. I mean, my friends were a good athlete. And so we serve, and of course we serve underhand because that's what Waldo Miller taught us. And so he's over on the other side, and all of a sudden we see 3 skills that we'd have never seen before. It'd be like somebody that lived out in the country all their life and never seen a plane before. And the first thing he does is he forearm passes. What's that? And then the second thing is he sets it. We didn't know he's going to have 3 contacts for Crown 6, and he sets himself, and then he jumps. He could jump, and he jumps up and he just strokes the ball. I mean, he smacks it, and I'm standing right in the middle, and I don't have any clues about defense. Are you kidding? And I'm standing there like this, and he hits me right between the eyes. I mean, and he could bring it. I mean, and he put me on my butt. I'll tell you right now. And I was no longer making a laughing. I started sniveling. What was that? That's cheating. I mean, you took 3 contacts. He said, well, and all of a sudden he didn't look so pitiful anymore. I mean, he said, that's right. I had 3 contacts. When you play volleyball, you have 3 contacts on your side. And since I'm by myself, I have 3 contacts. Oh, but what were those? Well, that's just the way the game's played, boys. And then he goes back. He won the serve. That's all he did, of course, because we were just playing flat-out volleyball at that time. He goes back and he jump serves, and he just served out the side. 15 straight points. We just stood and watched the ball go by. We had no idea. And he's smiling. And guess where the trash talk was now? We were silent. I mean, he silenced us. And he goes, I'll see you in the fall, boys. We got a team to build. And that's how I started in the game. Exactly how I started. And then I went to George Williams College where he played. And then I played at George Williams. And that's where I met Jim Coleman. And I never looked back. I got into that game. And you know how you guys know, somehow volleyball sucks you in.
Yeah, I know. Are you talking early 60s, mid 60s?
That was make sure I get this right. Okay, I graduated I hate to even say this out loud. I graduated in 1963 in high school, and I graduated college in 1967. Yeah.
And well, Bill, at that time, a lot of people can't imagine that, but early 60s volleyball was nothing in the United States.
No,
Nothing,
No,
less than nothing.
no, I know. It was just like that. It was the game that, I mean, and it actually went along like that for years because, I mean, the TV or anybody, they never gave it any attention whatsoever because the perception of the game was what you were taught and what we were taught in the US was it just you played with a rubber ball and it was on a saggy net, I mean, it was terrible. And then it grew from there. So, there's guys like Kessel who I think really changed the perception over well, much later, but you know, so
Yeah, yeah.
that's been our
Uh,
mission, of course.
Octavio, want to say something?
Yes, for sure. It's this. I think these kind of questions between all our folks. It's a general. I remember when I started with volleyball, I used to play American football. So when I was in the high school, so after a very tough training session, I decided. Well, my father asked me to play because he said, "Okay, Octavio, if you want to play for the next American football season, you have to play first volleyball." So then I say, "Okay, I will try. I will give a try." Perfect. When I noticed my coach that I have to that I was doing that season for American football, he said, "Okay, it's fine. I'll give you 1 month, and after that, you will decide if you are going to keep in the American football or if you decide to go for the volleyball." Every single day, the full team, I mean the American football team, were looking at me when I was training, and more than one decide to go for volleyball too as well.
Uh-huh.
So these are the kind of stories that really, really change our lives. If my father never asked me to try the volleyball, I would keep playing American football. But thanks for my dad, I decided to play volleyball, and then I just started doing a good job there. So it's very funny uh, listening the different stories that we hear when we ask our guests, "Okay, how did you involve in the volleyball?" This one, it's a good one, Bill.
Well, hey Bill, let me tell you something. In my case, I um, I grew up watching. My dad, he was born in the border in Laredo, Texas, so he always watched baseball and American football, no soccer. So I grew up watching a lot of baseball and American football and a little basketball. But then, well, you gotta know that, especially in Mexico, in the mid 80s, for Los Angeles 84, uh, you can watch in local TV only 3 or 4 minutes a day of volleyball, no more.
Yeah.
So, well, I remember perfectly when I watch uh, the USA national team in '84. I fall in love with the game. Watch playing Steve Timmons, Karski. Let me tell you something about Steve Timmons. I told Doc and John 2 months ago. They didn't believe me. Steve Timmons is more recognized in Mexico, is most remembered than Karski itself. Yeah, it's everybody of my generation, the generation of Octavio, everybody remembers Steve Timmons, and not all of them can remember Karski playing. It's
Oh, yeah,
pretty,
all right.
it's pretty amazing. So, well, when I watched that team with Karch, with Pat Powers, Steve Timmons, Craig Bock, then Jeff Stork, the lefties, I told myself, hey, this is my game. This is my sport. It's very amazing. It's very fun. It's very dynamic. But well, let's face it. Right now in 2022, volleyball is struggling in some parts of the world because they have still the stigma of it's just a recreational sport. It's just a women's sport. But man, it's a pretty tough game to play.
Oh, very tough. Yeah. Uh, Larry Sears was right when he originally came into our meeting. I mean,
Definitely he was. Definitely
oh
he
yeah,
was.
I
Because
mean,
it implies the coordination of the upper body as well as the low body. Nobody takes care of that. They as you said, they said that it is easy, but definitely it's not easy. And more if you want to play in the high level, it has to be very precise. Every movement has to be on time and at the perfect moment at the perfect time. So everything involved in the volleyball, it has to be very, very precise.
yeah, I would go back into that meeting now and argue for volleyball. I mean, I mean, I've played them all, and it is, you know, it's just the reward of how do you score, and it's tough. I mean, it's just flat out tough. Even, I mean, it's so, on one hand, it's so delicate and precise, and on the other hand, it's a violent game. I mean, when the ball is hit, and you know, it's getting. I don't know if you guys watch the NC2A women's finals, but there's a rotation at the University of Wisconsin, who won the national championship this year for women. They rotated into one rotation where they had the freshman gal and she was from Canada, and she's a freshman at Wisconsin, 6'9", and another gal at 6'8", and a third one at 6'5". I mean, and their team was much taller than our '84 Olympic team, a men's team. I mean, and the game is getting huge. You know, I mean, whew. And they weren't just big gomers; they were really athletic. I mean, they stood tall. I mean, that's what I mean. The game is evolving also with that. Is that the game? You know, it's being played by big, strong
Yeah.
athletes. And
Hey Bill, last year here in the show was Debbie Green, the Olympian,
uh,
and she told me, hey, at that time in the 80s, I was considered small, but in today's volleyball, it is impossible. I can play at the Olympic level. Debbie
yeah,
Green and a Hall of Famer.
yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I played a lot, and I think it was fairly good, but I saw the handwriting on the wall quickly. And that's why I went into coaching because, you know, I didn't have to be tall to do that. So, you know, when I see old photographs and I see myself, I go, good, am I short?
Bill, then you had this amazing opportunity to attend the Olympics in Mexico City in '68, and then you joined what's the All Army volleyball team? It's Army, Air Force, and Marines, or what? What does mean All Army?
I'm sorry. The armed forces, all four: Navy, Army,
All right.
Marine, and Air Force, and they had championship teams, and they would have an inter-service competition, and it was really a PR thing, you know, especially in those days, to try to improve their image. And so there were, and all four of those were really, they had some really good athletes, of course, because, and especially when during the draft. I mean, and I was lucky again when I was on the all Army team. There were a lot of players in the Army that were drafted in there that I knew could play the game, and I had, because the Army, the services were very competitive with each other, and traditionally the Air Force was the best in volleyball, and that's John Stanley. You remember this? You remember?
Oh yeah, the father of Clay Stanley.
Yeah, and John was good, and they had also John Alstrom and some others. That so the Air Force was very dominating. The Army not so much, but at that time. So when I came in there, the Army gave me pretty much an open hand, a free hand to go recruiting. I mean, I went into, I would call on what was called the Audubon, which was I could call all around. Now it's all different, but in those days that was a big deal. I could call into Vietnam if I knew there was a player there. I mean, I got my assistant coach from down in Georgia. He was in Fort Benning. He was an airborne ranger, as a kid I grew up with. He was also at that when we were playing Larry Sears way back, and I got him as my assistant coach. I thought that was pretty fun. But I also was able to recruit or draft, and it wasn't hard to. I'd say you have a choice of staying in the jungle, and or you could come to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and join the All-Army volleyball team. What do you think? It was amazing how fast they got on a plane. So yeah, I think I'll take that volleyball option. That sounds pretty good. So I had a chance to really develop a pretty good team of players, and so that we could get pretty strong. So we had an opportunity to build a pretty strong team. Coleman, and he was right there. I was in Chicago, is where we trained, and he was at George Williams. So I had an advisor right there, and he helped me a lot. That was my first gig. So, I mean, things fell in place for me, but it was very competitive. But the military took it very seriously because of the image, of the whole thing. And it got me started in my career, really did.
And at that time, there were the World Military Games.
Yeah, every year. I imagine they're still doing it. Yeah, we worldwide military games.
And volleyball was included at that time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's part of that because of the international games, world military games. So, the U.S. would be involved in it.
Great. And then came the opportunity for the Canada national team preparing for the Montreal Olympics in 76.
Yeah.
You were there from 73 to 78.
Right. Right. Well, I was, and at that time there was no paid jobs in volleyball, coaching volleyball. So and when I got out of the Army, I went straight to LA. I was in the YMCA. I was a program director, and there was 8 of the Olympians from Mexico City joined a team called Chart House, a club team in Los Angeles, and I coached them. Well, it was a pretty strong team for a club team, not bad. And so, and I don't think we ever lost. So it was actually kind of boring. And I learned a lot from that, because talk about a bunch of egos. There were 8 of them, and I could only start 6 of them, and they all believed, of course, I should start. And so, I had to deal with those strong personalities, that's an important role for a coach, as you might imagine. So I did that, but then that kind of, I wasn't necessarily I didn't like living down there too much. So I moved to Spokane, and I took a job in the YMCA in Spokane, Washington. And I coached a club team there and developed one and played on the team. So I was a player coach. And we were going to the Nationals down in Tennessee, and we were driving down there, and the state patrol was behind me. I can't remember, in Indiana maybe, and I was driving a bunch of the kids, and they, lights flashing. Oh, geez, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't think so. I pulled over, and the state patrol said, "You have a call." And I thought, oh no, so, I thought somebody died or something, and I said, "Who is it?" And they said, it's somebody in Canada. I said, in Canada? Yeah. And they had run me down. Once again, it was Coleman that kind of led me to him, or he led them to me, I should say. And they called the state patrol. They figured out where we were traveling en route to Tennessee. And he said I had this emergency call from the CVA, and they wanted me to come up and interview for their job. And I went, oh, that's interesting. So I said, well, I got this tournament I got to coach. And I said, well, you can come as soon as you get back. So we go to the tournament, come back, and I get back to Spokane. And I flew to Montreal, and I interviewed for the job. And they interviewed a few people, including Coleman. And I was what, 24 maybe at that time, something like that. I mean, I'm still a punk kid, and I kind of bluffed my way through the through the interview, and that was a time there was a real I'm sure you guys are familiar, it was a real rift between the French Canadians and the English. And I didn't know too much about that. I didn't, nor did I really care too much. And I was interviewed and in Montreal. Yeah. And I thought, well, I don't have much of a chance here. But lo and behold, they offered me the job. And I thought, well, yeah, I got to do this. It was the first full-time paid volleyball job in the country, in North America, I think.
Really?
Yeah. And so I moved back to Montreal and and I was the national coach. Well, that's when I started realizing there was a real rift between the French Canadians and the English Canadians. And not like I was an American, which they hated even worse. And so, and I'm just being kind of, and that was an unbelievable experience. I mean, I had tryouts, but I was by myself. That was the one thing. I had a manager, and that was it, because they had no budget really. But it was I got paid, and I was there through the Olympic Games, and there was there's a lot of stuff that went on there, but that was an education, I'll tell you that. But that was a fun team. The guys that I had on that team, I don't know if are you familiar with the name Garth Pischke?
Garth Pischke?
Garth Pischke.
No?
Is
No,
that,
Octavio?
No.
he was a player. He was as good as Karch, pretty
Really?
close. Yeah, he was a fabulous player. I mean, he was a Canadian guy, and I wish I was a good coach when I had him. I mean, he was a great kid, and he was also drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in hockey.
In hockey?
And yeah, he was a fairly good athlete, and he could jump. Oh man, could he jump! But and he kind of got obviously lost in the spin, but he was well known in the world as a player. But we didn't necessarily surround him with other talent. But that team, we moved from, how high did we get? I think we got 11th eventually in the world. But yeah, I had a good time, but I had a pretty good rivalry there, and I'm afraid the French Canadians don't like me too well, even probably this day, because I didn't want to play politics. I said I just want a volleyball team, and they, as I say, it could go on and on. There's a long story there, but it was talk about a learning experience about dealing with people and politics beyond. That's where I learned that there's a lot to it being,
Yeah, I
working.
will. I remember perfectly. You might remember in '76 in Montreal, the Cuban volleyball team they got bronze with the
Yeah.
huge players, Perez Bento, La Pera, Marshall,
Yeah.
and Raúl Vilches, who I don't know if you got a word that last week he died in Colombia.
Which one died?
This guy, Raúl Vilches.
Oh, is that right?
Raul Vilches, the captain, number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died last week. It was a shame, but a really, really tough Cuban generation. That.
Yes. Yeah, I knew those guys really well, and they're a good bunch of guys. Unfortunately, the politics always played into it, and Doug and I went later on with the U.S. team. Orlando Samuels, who coached them for a long time, was
Yeah.
really a good friend of ours, and we had long talks, and there were some sad things, but uh, we talked about lots of things. But boy, they had some serious players that could.
Yeah, they really can jump, especially Marshall, La Pera was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Marshall was my favorite player. I think he could jump. LaPera, he got more publicity, but I think Marshall could out jump him. I mean, they didn't, And the other thing, he was about my size. They were small. Those guys were small. Yeah. But man, could they jump and hit.
Do you
And,
agree that the initial volleyball players, they have more capabilities in terms of jumping than the actual players? Do you think?
The Cubans especially?
Yes, yes. I remember looking at the Cuban team, the male, the potential that they have, the strong, the jumping, the power. It was amazing for me. That I think that marked me, and that marked when I was starting with the volleyball, and they said I would like to do something like that. Obviously, I was so quiet away. I'm just 6 feet tall. So, but yeah, I remember when I look at them, I was just like impressive that I remember watching Joel Despain spiking um, a back row attack, but not the regular one. No, he was just jumping. He asked the setter to set out ball number one, a shorty, and he was just like smashing the ball in the 3 meter zone
oh,
in the
yeah.
back row attack. I said, uh-oh.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, well, later. Well, you know, when we were, when I was in Canada, we went, in the winter, we went down and trained in Cuba. There was a diplomatic exchange. And it was a nice reprieve for us because it was cold in Canada. And so, and their press would ask us, they'd come to and say, what do you want to learn while you're here? You know, and they'd come to me and I'd say, well, and so I thought, So they asked me, and I was with the coach of Canada or Cuba, and he said, so what would you like to learn? Well, I'd like our players, and I don't know, I was making it up, and I said, I'd like my players to learn how to jump like the Cubans. And so they translated that to the coach, and the coach looked at me and he said, he kind of grabbed my arm a little bit, almost pinched it. He said, you want to jump? And he started to speak English. He said, you want to jump like the Cubans? You've got to be Cuban. You got to, you got to be black. And he pointed like, and you
We
got to
we
be Cuban. I
we
went,
can't teach that.
yeah. I went, ah, oh yeah. That was the end of that conversation. I went, oh, okay.
Okay.
And let's move on.
Okay, how do you prepare mojitos then?
So, yeah, the Cubans were special. But it's funny. But you can see, well, they've kind of gone by the wayside. They're kind of average now. You
Yeah.
know,
And Bill, how was the situation of the Norseca teams at that time in '78? I mean, speaking about USA, they were not the best team in the world, of course. Mexico, Cuba. How was the situation of volleyball in Norseca at that time in '76 to '80?
um, well, Cuba dominated pretty much, and the U.S. was in, I don't want to say turmoil, but no, they probably were. But in other words, that was when the things started to change in the U.S. and Doug was getting involved, and we were thinking, if we're going to compete in the world, we got to go to a full-time program. And
Right.
so that's when they started in Dayton and all that kind of stuff. And and Canada was thinking the same thing, like going, hey, wait a minute, So that's when I was hired, and we went full-time too, as well, and moved to Winnipeg because I said, and I told Canadians, I said, look, I said, if as long as you have this political turmoil, then you're not going anywhere. So the move, and there's a lot of story to that, but the move is move the team, and they went to Winnipeg, and so the national team was relocated in Winnipeg, in Canada. In the meantime, in the U.S., it was in Dayton, and which is not the most pleasant, frankly, place to be, and so that so there were kind of teams in turmoil, but they were getting stronger. Cuba had, of course, was already doing their thing. Mexico always had some good players. Who's the Mexican? I'm trying to think of it.
Martin Castillo.
Yeah, Castillo. Yeah,
Oh,
and he was good.
amazing blocking.
Yeah, he was a big boy, and I liked the way he played. And but once again, it wasn't a deep team, but solid. And they're Puerto Ricans, and then there are some others, but uh, not anybody could quite match. And the Dominican Republic was okay too, uh, but kind of more individual, not united team. In Cuba, they weren't necessarily a great team itself, but they had more individuals. And so I think as evolution became, the U.S. over years became a better team as well as the Canadians. Um, I think that would have been where how things turned, but I don't know. But in that time it was, I think it was pretty dominated by the Cubans.
Yeah, right. Uh, well, and then when you left Canada, you went to Montana State University in two stints,
Yeah,
from 78 to 81, then 84 and 86. And in
yeah.
the middle, you were appointed as an assistant coach of USA volleyball team, preparing the Olympics in United States soil.
Yeah.
How how how
Oh,
how
we
how,
do that.
how came that opportunity with the relationship with Doug Beal or what?
Well, Douglas and I have been friends for years. We played against each other. We played with each other. Um, I was his best man at his wedding. I mean, and he was at my wedding. I mean, we were longtime friends. And when he was coaching the U.S. and I was coaching Canada, we beat them for the first time in the Norseca games, and and then but that was when they were just starting their program. We were a little bit ahead of program, and um, but hey, first of all, I'll tell you right now, he's a brilliant coach and a very intelligent guy. I don't know why he spent his time. He accepted me. I don't know, because I'm completely different than he is. He's way more disciplined, I should say, and formal, and you know,
Uh,
and he can kind of come along like that. But he he also is a wild man in a way, and I always could bring that out. And anyway, but he and I were just great friends, and so we were both again for that job. We're finalists for the head coach of the '84 team, and that was the night. And so and when we went down to interview, we roomed together. I mean, how about that? Because we were great friends. I mean, and one of us were going to get the job, and that was when I was at Montana State, and he was still the head coach coming from Dayton, and he was under a lot of scrutiny, and so he'd go and do his interview, and then I'd go do my interview and whatever, and of course they selected him, and we made a deal, so to speak, that if he got the head coach, he'd say he'd be my assistant, and if I got the head coach, he'd be mine. I mean, we'd still work together. I mean, I love the guy. I mean, if you, in my opinion, I'm hugely biased. Understand this, but that's the best coaching staff. I mean, I couldn't have gotten any better. It just couldn't be. I mean, it was because we were completely different kinds of personalities, but we blended together perfectly. So that's anyway. So he got hired, and then I became his assistant. And one of the first meetings we ever had, we were sitting down, and we said, "Okay, so what do we want to?" That was in '81. So we said, "What do we want?" And we were ranked at that time. We were, I think, 19th. And
19th,
oh yeah, we were pitiful.
after the Moscow Olympics that you didn't that
Well,
you didn't attend.
we weren't in the, yeah, of course we weren't in the Moscow Olympics, but I think we were ranked somewhere like that. I may be exaggerating, but we weren't up there. That's a fact. And I mean, remember the U.S. I know the year before had lost to the Dominican Republic, so you can there you have it. So Doug and I were sitting in the office, and we said, so what do we want to do in the Olympics in '84? And we said, we looked at each other, and we wanted to make sure there was no microphones, you know, in the office. And we said, we kind of looked at each other and said, win the Olympics. And we went, and we're just waiting for howls of laughter. You know, we were pretty sure that that would cause a lot of laughter because nobody even considered that that might even be a possibility. But we looked at each other and said, we could share that with each other because we were that kind of friends. And we said, yeah, that's what we want to do. Okay, great. That's big talk. How are we going to do it? And well, that's a good question. How are we going to do that? So we decided, well, we got to change the way the game of volleyball is played. I mean,
Completely.
I'm simplifying this a lot. I mean, there's a lot more trial and error to this, but we knew that we had to change things, and we knew that people were going to really criticize us first. And we asked each other, do we care about that? We like to be liked, but if we're gonna do this, we gotta be willing to risk. And so, yeah, and if there's anybody I want to risk with, that'd be the guy to do it with. So I said, let's get her done. And so he's Doug is really, you know, he's a scientist. He really researches out. I'm an idea kind of a guy. I'm kind of out of the box, kind of imagination stuff and so on. And so we kind of broke the game down and we said, how can we change that? What can we do there? And we had to look at our personnel. We got these kind of guys. What are we going to, you know, how can we take advantage of them? And so we developed principles. And I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, but for example, we know that the core of the game, as you guys well know, is serve receive. If you can't consistently pass serve, who cares? You have no offense, you have nothing else. So we said, so we've got to develop a system that allows us to pass serve, and I mean, better than anything. And so how do we do that? Well, we've got to have a system that allows us to expose our best serve receivers. Sounds simple, okay? Because you rotate, that's not that easy. And if you looked at teams, there are rotations, and to this day, there's somewhere they expose their worst receivers. Yes. And if you have good servers, then they're able to attack those people to this day. Okay, so Doug and I said, okay, how do we do it? Well, so we had to study our team and evaluate who our players. And we need good passers, a lot of them, not just 2 guys. We had several. But we said our best passers were Karai and a guy named Oldis Burzins. But there was also Paul. We had several others that were very, very good. We said, but we determined those 2 guys over the years. We decided those are by far our best passers. Okay, so can we set up our system that those 2 guys always passed? And we went, yeah, I think we can. So we toyed, we messed with them, and we brainstormed and went back and forth and argued and this and that. So we were able, by rotation, every rotation, to make sure those 2 guys passed the ball. Were our best, and they to this day, I think, and I may be embellishing this, which wouldn't be unusual. They're the best passers ever to play the game. So Carton Burzins was better. And I mean, they would be perfect 7.5, almost 8 out of 10 serves. Okay, now remember the jump serve had not really come in at that point. Brazil had a couple of jump servers. Canada had a jump server, and that was about it. I mean, now they're all hammering it, but they were nailed. And not only could they control where it went, but at what trajectory the ball went. So we could really conduct the speed of the attack consistently, time in and time out. Remember, it was a side-out game, so that you could play back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you'd look up at the scoreboard, and we'd be ahead, 5-0, and they'd be playing their hearts out, and they would be, they being the opponent, would be nowhere near us, and then we just go away and win. That's what happened later on. So that was one thing, is to develop the system so that our serve receive was great. Then we looked at the attack, and we said, how do we make the Soviet Union, which is the biggest, world's best blocking team, how do we make them bigger, smaller? You know, they're huge, and we're midgets, kind of. We were a fairly small team. How do we make them shorter? You know, we started laughing, and it was late at night. And you know, how do we make them shorter? And then we started thinking, well, if you're, I'm doing this on the screen, I'm not sure it's coming out, but if they're blocking straight over their head, they're big, really big, you know. But if we can force them to reach out away from their bodies, they become shorter. And we said, well, how do we do that? Well, and then I said to Doug, I said, well, you know, I figured out a system in Canada that I call the flare system.
The flare system.
Flare, yeah, and I spelled it like flare in, I don't know, FLAIR, but it actually flare, like you flare away. And the goal would, you'd go straight in and pop out. And I kind of built it off what Poland was doing. And so you'd flare away from the blockers and force them to chase you. And so, and I said, now we can maybe develop that. And so we developed a swing system, the swing offense. So, and we had a couple of principles. One thing, we were going to attack instead of a classic outside in. Remember now, everybody refers to outside hitters, the left side hitter, the right side hitter. So let's change their thinking about that. No longer we're going to use those terms. Okay, so Berzins and Karai principally. Now we had others too. But those two guys became no longer were the outside hitters, which they were basically in the rotation. They are now going to become the swing hitters. And they're going to be able to go from their passing positions to the left or to the right, or swing from inside out. Okay? So that the opponent doesn't really know where they're going. And they're going to swing away from it. So they have to chase them. Therefore, they become smaller blockers. And so these guys, and they were good hitters. They were small. Like our Berzins was only 6'1", I think, and Karch is a short 6'2". And so we went, okay, that works. Let's see, and it'll be a different approach, a little bit different skill set, but those guys were good. That's the other thing. You got to have the personnel to be able to do this with. And so we went, okay, that's a good idea. On paper, it works great. And so we worked on that. And that we developed a swing system. And it works on a couple of principles. One is that we were going to attack inside out as opposed to outside in with volleyball. Because if you're a left side hitter and my blockers know that, I can load my blockers up on you and on my best one. But if I don't know where you're going, I can't quite do that. So that we developed that. The second thing is we're going to work on a principle called disappear, reappear. So we kind of worked off what we call it kind of got out of football, an I formation, so that hitters would kind of come to the inside, in behind the middle, and so now you're kind of looking, where are they going? And then they break away, and so they disappear and then reappear somewhere, and we evolved from that principle, and but it was all based on the pass. So you had to pass, and the third component was you had to have a setter. And we were proponents of course, and we felt that, and we both believe this, is that a 5-1 was better than a 6-2 because you had one quarterback, one leader, and I still believe that. And that was based on what Nakota could do for Japan. You know, if you recall, he was my all-time hero, actually. You know, he could. Did you ever see him play? Nakota?
What's the name?
Nakota.
Nakura? The women, Kumi Nakara.
No, he's the men. Nakota.
Men. Nakura.
Katakushi Nakota.
From the 80s.
He played in 68.
Oh, in 68. Okay.
And then he played, I think he played all the way to 84. None, did he get there? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Oh, anyway, he was fabulous. So, but the point of it was that we felt, man, if you have a strong setter that can also deliver that tough set fast and speed, and we had one in, well, we had a couple of them, but Dusty Dvorak was our setter. So all that stuff. And then we thought, well, now then, so we go to the World Championships, which are in Argentina, and we have Brazil or Bulgaria just tore our block apart, and they were pretty good. And we thought, we got to do something about our block. So same thing, we decided, well, now, we want to have another principle. Then that principle would be, we want to have the ability to have a system that allows us to put our best block on the hitter most likely to hit in any given situation. That meant that our scouting had to be really good by situation. That's where Jim Coleman came in. And Coleman actually developed that system. And so we call it was a matchup system. And so we could pretty well match up in key situations. Defensively, we did that too on our back row, and then with the block. So that by the time we got to the finals by the Olympics, in the actual final 2 weeks, we had a pretty complete system of play that by situation, we could adjust and adapt to the opponent and yet play our own game. And, and we weren't an overwhelmingly big team. We were a smart team, and we had really good athletes that could do this stuff. So and Doug and I, we would argue if people went, ooh, those guys don't get along very well. Yeah, we got along fabulous because Doug and I trusted each other. And so we could get mad at each other and disagree with each other, but we'd always come together because we had a common goal. And, I always had his back and he always had mine. To this day, that's the way it is. And
Hey Bill, and you mentioned that in '81 you were ranked 19th in the world.
I think so.
Uh,
Something like that.
yeah, well, maybe. How was the impact in the United States volleyball after you got the gold medal in '84? I mean, it was a huge achievement.
Yeah. Well, people, of course, everybody loves a winner. Some people say, "Oh, I knew you'd do it," and you went through and go, "Yeah, where were you yesterday?" But it was they revered it. I mean, people love they love the gold medal, and they were very, very nice. It was very humbling. I always wondered, what would it feel like to actually win this? It was extraordinarily humbling, and people were very gracious, and they were, honored. And I said, well, it's a result of a lot of hard work, lots of hard work, lots of tears. I mean, it didn't just come easy, it came from some pretty tough times, but it paid off. There's a book coming out, guy by the name of Sean Murray. Did they talk to you about this?
Sean Murray? No.
It's coming out in July, I believe. And it's Sean Murray is the son of one of our team psychologists, Don Murray. And it's about the '84 team. And when it comes out, you got to get it. And I've read the draft. It's very good, really good. And it's called Gold Was the Destiny, I think, something like that. And it'll tell the story. He did a nice job. He really did a lot of research, and he really captured the feeling of that whole experience. So, just a thought.
I'll be waiting for the book. Octavio, want to say something?
No, I was just listening to Bill and the full story. But
Amazing story, by the way.
yes, because I think as the USL, the people there expect that since USA was the foundation of the volleyball, they should be always in the top. But it's not always that way. they had to work, they have to build, as you said, they had to do all the planification, all the plan to start working. So it's a really hard work.
It
And
is.
look, you can see now the successful of that goal. You have one of the I have been coaching here, and I really like all the way that you, as the USA Volleyball, just planned in the beginning, and now you have a really huge quantity of players winning to be pursuing that dream to become the national players.
Yeah.
So it's not only the goal, even that the goal was winning the gold medal. I think you just set up so much more than that. You just set up everything that is just trying to get that place over and over and over again. But you already built up huge pyramid for the players.
Well, I think it's like the analogy would be like when Everest was finally climbed, then lots of people have climbed Everest,
Yes.
or when the 4-minute mile was broken. You know, it sometimes then people they start to believe. And I think that that 84 team, provided the belief for a lot of people. And the men's program now has a high expectation. And now Karch with the women's team has done the same thing. There's a very high expectation. It doesn't guarantee anything, but the expectation of quality is there. So, one thing, you're right, the pyramid is there. One thing builds on another.
Amazing, Bill. Well, then you left USA Volleyball team. You went to your second stint in Montana State University. I can imagine it's a pretty small school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Division 1, Division 2?
No, it's Division 1. Yeah. But it's not known for its volleyball. I like the West. I like the mountains and Rockies and Montana, and here I am in Edmonds. So yeah, that's where I moved back to that, and I felt an obligation because I left there as well to do that, to the Olympics, and so I went back to Montana State, and it was a little bit different, and of course it wasn't quite the same level, but I enjoyed it, and it was a hard adjustment in a lot of ways, of course.
All right. And then, you joined the USA Volleyball as a technical director, and then you were the head coach in the 89-90.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just 2 years, a very short stint.
Yeah. And part of that was there was a transition going on, I think. And part of that is I think we all make mistakes, but I did not get along with who the executive director was at that time, Cliff McPeak. And I'm stubborn as heck, and to be frank. So, and I just wasn't going to put up with some of the stuff that was going on. And I thought, and I had a child in my family, and I went, nah, I'm not. I was getting older, and I'm not willing to go through some of the agony that I'd gone through and some of these other stuff. So I didn't stick with it, and I kind of regret it because I didn't go to the Barcelona Olympics, which I could have, and so as a result, I never really was deeply involved other than an advisor to the rest of the teams that came along.
And Timmons and Kirai, they left the team for playing in Italy, in Messaggero, then the beach. But then you spent almost 10 years in the University of Washington, a big place for volleyball.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I went back when I went back to the USAV, and I was like the director of coaching education in the country, and that's what I did for a while. I wrote a book, and and did a bunch of Kessel worked for me for a while, and then he he was involved in that process. And that was, I developed that program. And so and after that, I went back home up here and coached the University of Washington. Yeah, women.
Octavio, want to say something?
Yes, I was attending one of the one of the University of Washington games in for this season, and they are really amazing at this time. They just qualify for the final rounds, and I remember that game when they were facing the Montana team. It was even that they just won 3-0, no 3-1, I think. The second set, the second match, it was very, very fight. So it's amazing how the university level it's rising at this time. They are very competitive. There is no single or easy games. They are always fighting.
Yeah, I think that the strength of women's volleyball has moved east. I mean, I think the Midwest is much stronger now than the West, which is traditionally not the way it is. But, you look at Wisconsin, Ohio.
Penn State, Nebraska.
Yeah, they're
Mississippi.
They're the big girls now. And
Pittsburgh this year.
I know. I think some, like UCLA, USC, Pepperdine, Washington included, Stanford, yeah, not so dominant anymore. So, yeah. And I think part of it is just the game is growing.
That's right.
Exactly.
Great.
Hey, almost 19,000 people in the Final Four.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then you spent a big span of time in USA Volleyball as a national commissioner coaching education. I can assume working very, very close with John Kessel as a director of sport development. Amazing guy, John Kessel. Again, he's like a child in a 69-year-old body.
Yeah, I agree.
It's amazing guy, my very good friend John Kessel. I call him the Jedi Master of Volleyball because he's amazing. It's amazing philosophy, amazing thoughts, etc. But I wanna ask you about this project called NEVILLIZMS. Of course, it's a game of words of your last name, but it's a pretty interesting project. It is, or you have no more the court, the venue, but NEVILLIZMS is more than that.
Well, yeah, that term, my wife came with that, and what she did was she overheard the team, because I would occasionally when I was working with a national team, I'd create names, I'd create words to embellish or to make I don't know, just describe anything just to. So they'd remember certain things, and then Timmons and those guys who are great friends, they'd say, "All right, there's another Nevillism." That's what they used to say when I'd say something like that. And my wife heard that, and that's what she said when she and I were putting this program together and business together back here. She said, "Why don't we call it Nevillisms?" I'm like, that's my name. I don't necessarily want to use that. She said, "No, that'd be a good name." So that's the name. That's how we got to that name, Nevillisms, and and it caught on, and it was good. And we finally had to get out of the facility because they put a light rail train right through where we used to be. So that ended that. But I still have coaches call me and kids call me and stuff. So.
It was like a club, right? But you are still doing consulting.
Yeah, it was. That's the thing. People said it's got to be a club. You got to have a team. I said no. I'm going to be.
Necessarily.
It's not going to be It's going to be where kids can train, and from all clubs. And I'm not going to coach a club team exactly, but rather a place that will have sessions and we'll run some tournaments and stuff, but not a team specifically. So I worked with all the clubs and players.
Yes, I was about to talk about a little bit about that, Bill.
Yeah.
I have been here for 2 years. Only the last year I had the chance to start coaching
Yeah.
a club season, and for me it was the first one. It was very interesting. Then in this one, the second one, because there's a lot of rules, and I understand why there are a lot of rules. They have to they want to protect everyone in the volleyball, the player, the coaches, the high schools, the middle schools, everything is protected with all these rules. So even that it is very difficult to understand because there's a a lot. I understand why. In the other hand, something that that I was thinking actually this for this season is okay. The girls, they can belong to the clubs.
Yeah.
And the clubs, they want to have the best players, obviously, because everyone is competing for being in the top, right?
Yeah.
But there is one missing segment, and that segment is, as you said, those players who are not selected. What happened with them? So I was thinking, okay, what happened with them? They had two options: trying to get a club, trying to have other options, or wait for the next season. But what is going to happen with them if they don't have the chance to get into the season and get this expertise, this trainings, practice, everything, exposure? They are going to be missing the next season too. So I was thinking something like that, and that's part of one of the projects I would like to run over here.
Yeah.
But yes, on the other hand, it's a huge investment that I should do for having this. It's everything here. It's investments, and it's difficult to do. But I have something in mind, something like that.
Good. Yeah, because we used to work with those kids a lot. I mean, I didn't make an evaluation. If kids wanted to play the game and they wanted to work at it, I'll work with them. I don't care if they were, that tall or way tall. It didn't make any difference. Or if they had whatever their dream was. The greatest challenge was working with parents, as you might. What club were you working at?
At this time, I'm working with. You're going to hear the name Mark West and Raquel.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, so you're working with okay, so you're working with.
Hey, Bill, Octavio is very famous in Washington right now. Octavio, yeah, you gotta know him.
Yeah, cool. That's great. Yeah, Mark and they do a nice job, and they're honest and upright. And not all of them are honest and upright.
Yes, they have the Space Needle Volleyball Foundation.
Yeah, good. Well, good for you. I like Space Needle. Yeah. Well,
Now they have their own facility. They rented and they have three courts.
Yeah.
So every day it's full. There's full of the teams practicing. So
good. Well, they're right up the road from us, so that's nice. Yeah. I like them. They do it for the right reasons.
Exactly. That's the reason that I decide to be part of the team of the club, because they have the right seasons. I was listening or I realized with other clubs that it's difficult. They try sometimes to get the first place, but not the proper way. So that's one of the reasons I decided to have my daughter practicing in the Space Needle. Yeah.
Well, this is probably a little off the mark, but parents are by far they're the worst problem. And you'll appreciate this.
Hey, Octavio, you gotta visit Bill in the next few days.
I will. After we finish with the Volley Talk today, yes, I would like to meet you in person.
Oh,
Bill,
that'd be good. Yeah.
and let's see what can we do together.
Octavio was with me in 2 months ago in Querétaro in the clinic with Doug and John. We spent a wonderful time in Querétaro.
Oh,
One
yeah.
week of lots listening and watching John Kessel, and a lot of learns from both, yeah, Doug and Jim.
And Bill, they love Mexican food.
Oh, yeah. So do I. Oh,
So do
Which is your favorite Mexican food? And I gotta tell you that Chipotle and Taco Bell are not Mexican food.
Sure. What was my, how about quesadillas?
Oh, I love quesadillas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
the basics.
Oh, yeah. Once a week at least here. Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm not sure you'd consider them, pure here, but I like them. I like at least the name. So, yeah. Oh,
And you like spicy? You like
spicy.
yeah?
Yeah. My wife, no, but me, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Bill. We are in the last minutes of the talk of this amazing talk with a very big volleyball personality. I want to ask you something. What do you think, in your opinion? You have been involved with USA Volleyball since '68.
Yeah.
What do you think? How volleyball can grow in the way we all volleyball fans want to be developed in the United States? Do you think it's possible that you can have a really professional league?
Well, yeah, I think you can. It's a challenge though, and Doug and I have talked about that a lot. And he, of course, forever wants to do that. But what attracts people? And if you look at the big, like the NFL or NBA, they have heroes. Volleyball is not really, it's not. It's not designed. It's such a team game, and somehow we have to be good at developing the personalities. Karch Timmons, he was a personality, and that has to be done. But and it's getting better, but the marketing has not been good, I don't think, about volleyball. I think that I think Paul Sunderland and there's a couple, and Chris Marlowe, those guys are good announcers. They can make it, but there are some that they use, that some of these networks use. I scream, I go, oh, please, I don't know. They're just not good at describing the game. And it's a hard game, I understand that, but somehow, I don't know, that there's a way we have to present the game better. And it can also be repetitive if you just look at it. I don't think people, see the subtleties of the game that are really interesting, the tactics and the maneuvers and so on. And we need to educate the spectator better about what the game is. And I think Sunderland and Marlowe, they're good at describing that, but I think we need to do better at, why do they do this, or why are they focusing on this particular play, or what the game is played in 6 rotations. Well, what do you have to look? What do you anticipate when rotation 4 comes up? Is that the key? I mean, they can dramatize the game a little bit more. And let's admit it, let's say that the spectators, the athletic, the general sports spectator is based on that. I mean, they are into the drama of sport, not a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of it in volleyball. I mean, you can look at when you watch a tight game and you go, okay, they're cut, when teams are close and they're going, oh boy, here they're coming up on this server, or that rotation or whatever. And then they back it up with numbers like, okay, this team has to get through this rotation or they have no, what, I don't know. I'm just making it off the top of my head, but there has to be a story attached to every game. If you watch the NFL, they always, even if they're a useless game, they always create some dramatic kind of a thing. Like, okay, we got to look at, and I think there has to be some attention given to that, not giving a technical analysis of some of the the announcers really don't know the game, so they're trying to educate people on the various techniques or whatever. I'm just babbling, but there needs to be a dramatic thing so people get caught up in the story of the game, and of the personalities that are involved.
Amazing, amazing. Come on,
So do you
Octavio.
think that maybe the commenters should be ex-volleyball players? Maybe that would be an option, maybe? Do you think so, or?
Well, some of them, yeah. I think Chris Marlowe, Paul Sunderland. I'm biased, but those guys are good. I think really good. I think that.
What do you think, Bill, that we need in volleyball a personality like John Madden for football,
Yeah,
like Vince Scully for baseball?
yeah.
They are the commentators are promoters of the games. They are the people who have the contact with the fans
Right.
in the radio, in the streaming, in TV. I do agree with you.
They're entertainers. I mean, there's no question about that. I think Marlowe's an entertainer for sure, and he's trained as an entertainer. I mean, I think Karch is also very good. He's very articulate, and he obviously is an expert, and so on and so forth. And there are others, but I think there needs to be a seminar or a tryout or something to expand the pool. And this is going to be horribly sexist, but so far I have not seen, and there needs to be out there some women that have played a lot that need to be better. In my opinion, they have a tendency to talk too much, or at the wrong. Paul Sunderland, I watch him closely, but when he talks, his timing is great. I mean, he'll let it go, and he talks a lot, but at the right time, not nonstop or about the wrong things. And I just think that some of the other broadcasters that they muscle in because they are players, they just blab and not. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but and I just think there needs to be more training, and there needs to be tryouts maybe for those positions, and then there need to be some strategy of how they present matches dramatically, and with some enthusiasm that way. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah, well, because right now with the streaming, it could be very easy. TV is turning back to watch volleyball more than 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I think when I see the NCAA finals last month or one month ago, it was packed, the venue, but it's only once a year or twice a year.
I don't know.
Should be more frequent.
Yeah.
More frequency. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. It has to be. It can't be every now and then. There has to be a link that there's some meaning to, like leagues that need to be produced or should be submitted in the newspaper. They should be, where are the league standings? And I mean, it's just now and then that these things come out. So people don't. There needs to be some more stories about what's next. I mean, does anybody know right now how the teams they're training right now? The women's team for sure. The men's leagues are going right now. But I follow volleyball. I don't know. I know George Mason beat Indiana last week, but so what? I mean, what does that mean? And I don't know where they are in their league, unless I subscribe to something special. It's just not. It's not out there enough. The results. But that's easy for me to say. The newspapers, they're the media, I should say. They're the ones that say. And I remember one time I asked people, "What?" The media wants to say, "Why don't you put it out there more?"
Talking about American athletes, for example, you have Micah Christensen playing in Zenit Kazan, is a star. You have Matt Anderson playing in Italy, he's a big star. On the women's side, Kerstin Promer, Michelle Barsh-Hackley is World Club champion 1 month ago in Turkey. you have very
Yeah.
big players and very good athletes that almost nobody knows in the United States.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's what I mean. We just don't do we don't do a good job. And I don't think the USAV, even though it's not their priority, but it should be. I mean, and we've got some smart people that should know that stuff, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, Octavio, want to say something else?
No, no, no. It's everything that we are discussing here, talking about. It's a very nice. I just take some notes about the volleyball game. So it has to be more promoted with not only the commenters, the coaches, the players, the ex-players. Something to put some of the league standings. Let's create a magazine, an electronic magazine. I mean,
Yeah.
this is
We, Bill, we are trying to do that.
Yeah.
in Mexico.
This is
Yes.
episode 168. I have had here people from 40 different countries, 60 talks in English, but sometimes we say, hey, what else we have to do? I mean, um, we because we love volleyball, we are in volleyball. It's pretty easy for us to talk about volleyball, to talk about European leagues or World Championships or World Cups, but when you look at the crowds, they almost nobody knows nothing about that.
Oh,
Here in Mexico, you can talk about the national championship, yeah, but
yeah.
almost nobody can talk about the European leagues or the World Championship or the World Cup. Almost nobody, and that I think that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting example is that um, Formula One racing, car racing, you
Yeah,
know, it is around, especially in Europe. It's people are fanatical about that. And yet in this country, people like NASCAR, but they don't know my son, who's on the East Coast. I mean, he's really got into Formula One, and Lewiston, who's a big winner and stuff. It's a huge. I mean, and the money it's involved. Oh my criminy! But and it's worldwide, but yet you don't even see it reported in the U.S. hardly. Although there are now going to be two races, I think, next year. But it's one of the big sports in Europe. But it's not reported here very much, except NASCAR is. I mean, it's all about marketing and and how you do that. And it'd be nice to see more of that. And
yeah. For example, here in Mexico, Formula One returned within 6 or 7 years ago, and it's packed. The Formula One came to Mexico in late October,
yeah,
early November. 200,000 people goes to
yeah,
Formula One to
Thanks.
spend for a ticket for maybe $150
yeah, it's
every day.
huge. I know. Yeah. Well, Mexico has a good team, I think, and they also have a race, right?
Yeah, we have
Ohio.
a race every year since
Yeah,
6 or 7 years ago. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's
So
packed.
I don't know. No,
Okay. Well, Bill, it has been a great way to talk with you. Thanks a lot for accepting to be in the show. Thanks to Doug Bill, who I made contact with you through Doug Bill. Doug Bill told me, hey, please say Neville, I wish him a very good year, a very happy new year. And he wasn't able to be here. I think he's traveling right now. You
yeah.
know, he's the head of USA Surfing right now.
Oh yeah. Trust me, I give him the worst time in the world about that. I mean, are you kidding me? I don't know.
He lives in Colorado in the mountains, and he runs USA Surfing.
I know it. I know he does. And he, of course, the guys on the national team, they never hear that they give him the worst time about that. I mean, joking, but I'm always asking Doug, well, send me a bunch of booty and a good hat and stuff. I mean, he's about as far away from being a beach guy than anybody you can think of. There is. So
Talking about beach, Bill, have you ever been involved in beach volleyball? Did you like beach volleyball or not a lot?
I'm really not involved. I've played a little bit, but no, I would not sit myself as an expert in beach volleyball.
Mhm.
Okay. Octavio, anything else?
No, just to thank you. Thank you, Bill. I hope to contact you soon.
You gotta
It
go with
was,
Bill, Octavio.
yes, I will.
It's
I
your
will.
it's your
I
it's your mission.
promise
It's your
I
mission.
will. I promise I will. And no, just to thank you for this for this volley talk. It was a very nice learning, listening to you. And as soon as we finish with this one, I want you to let you know that I am going to prepare the dinner for my family. So today I am going to prepare
Okay, go.
rajas with cheese. So it's going to be something like quesadilla, but more spicy.
With flour or corn tortilla?
Flour,
Flour.
flour,
Do you like,
tortillas.
Bill, more flour or corn tortilla?
I have to admit, I lean on flour tortillas. I know, not so traditional, but personal taste.
Okay, Bill, has been a pleasure. I'm gonna take a picture, so please smile, guys, so I can send the picture to Doug, and to John.
Wow,
Amazing guys, both of them. Doug
they
and
are.
John were pretty amazing.
Definitely, definitely.
Bill, thanks again for being here. Has been a pleasure, and
Thank you.
I hope to keep in touch with you.
I hope so. I appreciate it.
Okay, Octavio will be with you next week.
Very soon, very soon. Next week, I will contact you. I would like to
Okay.
talk to you and let's see what we can do here in Washington.
Yes, that sounds good.
Well, Bill,
Okay.
thanks for sharing volleyball
Thank
with
you.
us. See
Thank you.
you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
See
Bye.
you soon. Bye
Good
bye.
luck
Have a
with
nice
it.
weekend.
Vemos, Octavio.
Nos vemos, amigo.